Hello, and welcome to the Cozy Curiosity channel. Tonight, we'll wander beneath the canopy of the world's forests, exploring 100 mesmerizing facts about these ancient, breathing landscapes. Forests cover nearly a third of our planet's land, sheltering countless creatures, purifying our air, and holding secrets that stretch back millions of years. From towering redwoods that touch the clouds, to underground networks where trees communicate through whispers of chemistry, the forest is a world of wonder, both visible and hidden. So settle in, let your breathing slow like the gentle sway of branches, and allow your mind to drift through dappled sunlight and shadow as we uncover the mysteries of Earth's green guardians. Whether you're here to learn, relax, or simply fall asleep, these calming stories and fascinating truths will guide you into a peaceful night. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, and let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Let's begin. Trees communicate with each other through an underground network called the Wood Wide Web. Beneath the forest floor exists a hidden internet of sorts, a vast network of fungal threads called mycorrhizae that connect tree roots to one another. Through this underground web, trees can share nutrients, water, and even warning signals about insect attacks or drought conditions. When one tree is struggling, neighboring trees may send it carbon and nitrogen through these fungal highways, keeping the weaker individual alive. Mother trees, the largest and oldest in the forest, act as hubs in this network, nurturing their offspring and supporting the entire community. This wood-wide web demonstrates that forests are not simply collections of individual trees competing for resources, but cooperative societies where survival depends on communication and mutual aid. The fungi benefit too, receiving sugars from the trees in exchange for minerals they extract from the soil, creating a partnership that has existed for over 400 million years. A single tree can house thousands of different species of organisms. When you look at a tree, you're not seeing a single entity, but an entire ecosystem. One mature oak tree can provide habitat for over 2,000 species of insects, birds, mammals, fungi, lichens, and other organisms. The bark offers shelter for beetles and spiders. The leaves feed caterpillars and deer. The flowers provide nectar for bees and butterflies. And the acorn sustains squirrels, jays, and wild boar. Woodpeckers excavate nest holes in the trunk, which later become homes for owls, bats, and flying squirrels. Mosses and lichens carpet the branches, creating microhabitats for tiny invertebrates. Even a dead tree continues supporting life, as fungi decompose the wood and insects burrow through the rotting timber. This incredible diversity shows that biodiversity isn't measured just in the number of trees, but in the countless relationships and dependencies that make each tree a world unto itself, a vertical universe where thousands of lives intersect. Forests produce most of the oxygen we breathe through photosynthesis. Every breath you take connects you to a forest somewhere on Earth. Through the process of photosynthesis, trees absorb carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and use sunlight to convert it into sugars for growth, releasing oxygen as a byproduct. While ocean phytoplankton produce about half of Earth's oxygen, forests generate much of the rest, with the Amazon rainforest alone contributing roughly 6% of the world's oxygen supply. A single large tree can produce enough oxygen to support 2 people for an entire year. Beyond oxygen production, forests also filter pollutants from the air, trapping dust, smoke particles, and toxic gases on their leaves and bark. The very air quality of our cities improves when trees are present, making urban forests essential for human health. This exchange between trees and atmosphere has shaped our planet's climate for hundreds of millions of years, creating the oxygen-rich air that allowed complex life, including humans, to evolve and thrive. The oldest known tree is over 5,000 years old and still growing. High in California's White Mountains stands a bristlecone pine named Methuselah, estimated to be over 4,150 years old, though an even older bristlecone pine was discovered in the same area exceeding 5,000 years. These ancient trees were already centuries old when the Egyptian pyramids were built, and have witnessed the entire span of recorded human history from their remote mountain perches. Bristlecone pines survive in harsh, high-altitude environments where few other plants can grow, facing extreme cold, fierce winds and nutrient-poor soil. These difficult conditions actually contribute to their longevity, as slow growth produces dense, resinous wood that resists decay, insects, and disease. Their twisted, gnarled forms tell stories of survival, with some trunks containing more dead wood than living tissue, yet continuing to produce new growth each year. Scientists study tree rings from these ancient individuals to understand climate patterns stretching back millennia, making them not just living organisms, but natural archives of Earth's environmental history. Forests can create their own rain through a process called transpiration. Trees don't just receive rain, they help create it. Through their leaves, trees release water vapor into the atmosphere in a process called transpiration, where moisture absorbed by roots is pulled up through the trunk and evaporates from tiny pores called stomata. A single large tree can release hundreds of gallons of water into the air each day. When millions of trees transpire together, they create vast moisture plumes that rise into the atmosphere, cool, and condense into clouds, which then produce rain. The Amazon rainforest generates roughly half of its own rainfall through this mechanism, effectively creating a self-sustaining water cycle. When forests are cleared, this cycle breaks down, leading to reduced rainfall, longer dry seasons, and increased drought risk not just locally, but hundreds of miles away. This means forests don't just respond to climate, they actively shape it, acting as green engines that pump moisture through the atmosphere and distribute water across entire continents, making them essential regulators of regional and global weather patterns. The tallest trees on Earth can reach heights over 380 feet. Standing in a coast redwood forest is like standing among skyscrapers made of living wood. The tallest known tree, a coast redwood named Hyperion, located in California's Redwood National Park, towers 380.3 feet above the forest floor, taller than the Statue of Liberty. These giants thrive in the foggy coastal climate, where moisture from ocean fog provides supplemental water during dry summers. Coast redwoods can live for over 2,000 years, growing continuously upward, while their massive trunks, which can exceed 20 feet in diameter, support enormous weight. Their height creates distinct vertical zones within the forest canopy, each hosting different communities of plants and animals. The upper canopy bathes in sunlight and wind. The mid-canopy offers shelter and moderate light, and the forest floor exists in perpetual shade and stillness. These towering trees demonstrate the limits of biological engineering as water transport becomes increasingly difficult beyond 400 feet, creating a theoretical ceiling for tree height that even these magnificent organisms cannot surpass. Time tens or more. Forests absorb and store massive amounts of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. Trees are among Earth's most powerful allies in fighting climate change. As they grow, they absorb carbon dioxide through photosynthesis and lock the carbon into their wood, roots, and leaves, effectively removing greenhouse gases from the atmosphere. Global forests store roughly 861 billion tons of carbon, more than the amount currently in the atmosphere. Old-growth forests are particularly valuable carbon sinks because large, mature trees store far more carbon than young saplings. And undisturbed forest soil contains vast carbon reserves accumulated over centuries. When forests are cut down or burned, this stored carbon is released back into the atmosphere, contributing to global warming. Protecting existing forests and restoring degraded ones are therefore critical climate strategies. A single tree might absorb about 48 pounds of carbon dioxide per year, but when multiplied across billions of trees, forests become planetary-scale carbon capture systems, naturally performing a service that would cost trillions of dollars to replicate with technology. Some trees can walk by growing new roots toward better conditions. While trees can't uproot and stroll through the forest, some species do walk slowly over time by growing new roots in favorable directions, while old roots die back. The walking palm of Central and South American rainforests is the most famous example. When a walking palm finds itself in shadow or poor soil, it grows new, stilt-like roots towards sunlight or better nutrients, gradually shifting its position by up to 20 meters over several years. As new roots establish themselves and become the primary support structure, the older roots on the opposite side die and decay, effectively moving the tree's center. Similarly, mangrove trees in coastal areas send out prop roots that allow them to stabilize in new locations as shorelines shift. This remarkable adaptation shows that even sessile organisms can respond dynamically to changing environments. Though the movement is imperceptible in human timeframes, over decades and centuries, these trees demonstrate that rootedness doesn't mean immobility, and that survival sometimes requires a very slow, patient kind of motion. Forests cool the planet both locally and globally through various mechanisms. When you step into a forest on a hot day, the temperature drop is immediately noticeable, sometimes by 10 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit compared to open areas. Trees create this cooling effect through shade, which blocks direct sunlight from heating the ground, and through transpiration, which releases moisture that evaporates and absorbs heat energy. But forests also cool the planet globally. Their dark green canopies absorb sunlight rather than reflecting it like ice or bare ground. But the overall cooling effect from transpiration and carbon storage outweighs this absorption in most cases. Tropical forests, in particular, pump so much moisture into the atmosphere that they create cloud cover, which reflects sunlight back into space. Forests also influence wind patterns and ocean currents through their effects on temperature and humidity. Without forests, many regions would experience more extreme temperature fluctuations, hotter summers, and disrupted rainfall patterns. They act as Earth's natural air conditioning system, moderating temperature extremes and creating stable climates that support agriculture and human civilization. The smell of the forest comes from chemicals trees release for protection. That fresh, pleasant aroma you smell while walking through a pine forest or after rain in the woods comes from organic compounds called terpenes that trees emit as part of their defense systems. Terpenes help trees communicate danger to neighbors, repel harmful insects, and attract beneficial predators that eat pest species. They also have antibacterial and antifungal properties, protecting the tree from disease. Conifers like pines and firs are particularly rich in terpenes, which is why pine forests have such a distinctive scent. After rainfall, another compound called geosmin is released from soil bacteria, creating that earthy petrichor smell we associate with forest freshness. Some studies suggest that breathing forest air rich in these compounds can reduce stress, lower blood pressure, and boost immune function, a phenomenon the Japanese call forest bathing or shinrin-yoku. The forest scent is therefore not just pleasant, but potentially therapeutic, a chemical language that speaks to our biology in ways we're only beginning to understand. A handful of forest soil contains more organisms than people on Earth. Beneath your feet in any forest lies an invisible metropolis, teeming with life. 1 teaspoon of healthy forest soil can contain more than 1 billion bacteria from thousands of species, along with countless fungi, protozoa, nematodes, and other microscopic organisms. These soil creatures are the foundation of forest health, breaking down dead leaves and wood into nutrients that trees can absorb, aerating the soil and cycling carbon and nitrogen through the ecosystem. Earthworms, though larger and visible, play crucial roles by mixing organic matter into mineral soil and creating channels that improve water infiltration. The fungi among them form those mycorrhizal networks that connect trees, while bacteria form partnerships with certain plant roots to fix atmospheric nitrogen into usable forms. This hidden world is so complex and poorly understood that scientists estimate we've identified less than 1% of soil microbe species. Without this underground community, dead plant matter would accumulate, nutrients would become locked away, and forests would cease to function. The soil is not empty dirt, but a living system, as vital as the trees above. Forests can live for thousands of years, even as individual trees die and regrow. While individual trees have lifespans ranging from decades to millennia, forests themselves can persist far longer, maintaining continuous presence for tens of thousands of years. The Pando Aspen Grove in Utah is estimated to be 80,000 years old, though it looks like a forest of separate trees. In reality, Pando is a single organism, a massive underground root system that sends up thousands of genetically identical stems. Even conventional forests show remarkable longevity. Old-growth forests that have never been logged contain trees of many ages, from ancient giants to young saplings, creating a self-perpetuating system. When an old tree falls, it creates a gap in the canopy that allows light to reach the forest floor, triggering a race among seedlings to fill the space. The fallen tree itself becomes a nurse log, providing nutrients and moisture for the next generation. This cycle of death and renewal means the forest as an ecosystem can persist far longer than any individual member, making it effectively immortal as long as conditions remain favorable. The forest is less a collection of things than a continuous process, a flowing pattern that maintains itself through constant change. Trees can remember past droughts and prepare for future ones. Trees possess a form of memory that helps them survive recurring stress. When a tree experiences drought, it doesn't just react in the moment. It alters its physiology in ways that persist for years. Trees that have survived drought produce wood with different cellular structures, create deeper root systems, and adjust their water use strategies, making them more resilient when the next drought arrives. Some species even pass on stress memories to their offspring through epigenetic changes, chemical modifications to DNA that don't alter genes but affect how they're expressed. Seeds from drought, stressed parent trees show enhanced drought tolerance even before experiencing water shortage themselves. Scientists have found that trees growing in seasonal environments develop internal clocks that help them anticipate coming changes, budding earlier or later based on past temperature patterns. This adaptive memory allows forests to survive variable climates and suggests a level of learning and information storage in organisms we typically think of as passive and unaware. The tree remembers through its body, encoding experience into the very structure of its being. Forests prevent erosion and protect water quality downstream. Tree roots are nature's soil anchors, holding earth in place and preventing it from washing away during heavy rains. On steep slopes, forests are especially critical. The dense network of roots binds soil particles together while the canopy intercepts rainfall, reducing its force before it hits the ground. Leaf litter and forest floor vegetation absorb water like a sponge, slowing runoff and allowing more moisture to infiltrate into groundwater rather than rushing across the surface, carrying soil with it. When forests are removed, erosion rates can increase by 100 to 1,000 times, filling rivers with sediment that smothers fish habitat and clogs reservoir. Forests also filter water naturally as it percolates through soil layers, removing pollutants, excess nutrients, and pathogens. Many cities, including New York, rely on forested watersheds to provide clean drinking water without expensive treatment facilities. The value of this service is immense. Protecting a forest watershed, trees can remember past droughts and prepare for future ones. Trees possess a form of memory that helps them survive recurring stress. When a tree experiences drought, it doesn't just react in the moment. It alters its physiology in ways that persist for years. Trees that have survived drought produce wood with different cellular structures, create deeper root systems, and adjust their water use strategies, making them more resilient when the next drought arrives. Some species even pass on stress memories to their offspring through epigenetic changes, chemical modifications to DNA that don't alter genes but affect how they're expressed. Seeds from drought, stressed parent trees show enhanced drought tolerance even before experiencing water shortage themselves. Scientists have found that trees growing in seasonal environments develop internal clocks that help them anticipate coming changes, budding earlier or later based on past temperature patterns. This adaptive memory allows forests to survive variable climates and suggests a level of learning and information storage in organisms we typically think of as passive and unaware. The tree remembers through its body, encoding experience into the very structure of its being. Forests prevent erosion and protect water quality downstream. Tree roots are nature's soil anchors, holding earth in place and preventing it from washing away during heavy rains. On steep slopes, forests are especially critical. The dense network of roots binds soil particles together while the canopy intercepts rainfall, reducing its force before it hits the ground. Leaf litter and forest floor vegetation absorb water like a sponge, slowing runoff and allowing more moisture to infiltrate into groundwater rather than rushing across the surface, carrying soil with it. When forests are removed, erosion rates can increase by 100 to 1,000 times, filling rivers with sediment that smothers fish habitat and clogs reservoir. Forests also filter water naturally as it percolates through soil layers, removing pollutants, excess nutrients, and pathogens. Many cities, including New York, rely on forested watersheds to provide clean drinking water without expensive treatment facilities. The value of this service is immense. Protecting a forest watershed costs far less than building filtration plants and provides additional benefits like wildlife habitat, recreation, and carbon storage. In protecting forests, we protect the very water we drink. Some trees can survive being almost completely burned. Fire might seem like pure destruction, but many tree species have evolved remarkable adaptations to survive and even thrive after blazes. Thick, fire-resistant bark on species like ponderosa pine and coast redwood insulates the living tissue underneath, allowing the tree to survive ground fires that would kill other species. Some eucalyptus trees store energy in underground lignotubers, swollen root structures that can re-sprout even if the entire above-ground portion burns completely. Certain pine species have serotinous cones that remain sealed with resin until fire melts it open, releasing seeds into the ash-enriched soil where competition has been cleared away. Aspen and some oaks re-sprout from their roots after fire kills the trunk, quickly regenerating. These adaptations show that fire has been part of forest ecology for millions of years, shaping tree evolution and creating ecosystems dependent on periodic burning. In fact, some forests become unhealthy without fire, as fuel accumulates and shade-tolerant species crowd out fire-adapted ones. The relationship between forests and flame is far more nuanced than simple destruction. Forests house more than 80% of all terrestrial species on Earth. If you want to find the greatest diversity of life on land, look to the forests. Tropical rainforests alone contain over half of Earth's plant and animal species, despite covering less than 7% of land area. A single hectare of Amazon rainforest can contain over 750 species of trees and over 500 species of higher plants, more tree diversity than exists in all of North America. This incredible richness extends to animals, with forests providing habitat for countless insects, birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. Many species are so specialized they live nowhere else, depending on specific trees, forest structures, or microclimates that exist only in intact woodlands. Canopy-dwelling creatures rarely touch the ground, while others inhabit only the leaf litter or rotting logs. This stratification and specialization creates ecosystems of almost incomprehensible complexity. When forests are destroyed, we lose not just trees, but entire webs of relationships, some so intricate we haven't yet discovered them. Protecting forests means protecting the majority of Earth's terrestrial biodiversity, much of which remains unknown and unnamed, existing in a green world we've barely begun to explore. Trees can sense when they're being eaten and change their chemistry. Trees are not passive victims of herbivores. When insects begin feeding on leaves, trees detect the damage through chemical signals in their saliva and immediately begin defensive countermeasures. Within hours, the affected leaves and even neighboring leaves produce bitter-tasting compounds, toxins or substances that interfere with insect digestion, making them less palatable and nutritious. Some trees release volatile chemicals into the air that serve double duty. warning nearby trees to increase their own defenses and attracting predatory insects that feed on the herbivores attacking them. For example, when caterpillars chew apple tree leaves, the tree emits chemicals that attract parasitic wasps, which lay eggs in the caterpillars, eventually killing them. Different types of damage trigger different responses. Trees can distinguish between insect feeding and mechanical damage, like a broken branch, responding only to actual threats. This sophisticated defense system shows that trees actively perceive and respond to their environment, making real-time decisions about resource allocation. They fight back, not with movement or sound, but with chemistry, in a silent war waged in compounds and molecules. The Amazon rainforest produces 20% of Earth's oxygen, but consumes nearly all of it. There's a common misconception that the Amazon is the lungs of the Earth, producing a disproportionate share of our oxygen. While the Amazon does produce enormous amounts of oxygen through photosynthesis, the forest also consumes nearly the same amount through respiration by trees, decomposition by fungi and bacteria, and the breathing of countless animals. The net oxygen contribution is close to zero. However, this doesn't diminish the Amazon's importance. It stores approximately 150 to 200 billion tons of carbon in its biomass and soil, making it a critical buffer against climate change. When living, the Amazon is roughly carbon neutral, but when trees are cut or burned, that stored carbon floods into the atmosphere. The forest also drives regional and global weather patterns, generates rainfall across South America, and houses an estimated 10% of all species on Earth. Its value lies not in oxygen production, but in carbon storage, biodiversity, climate regulation, and the countless ecosystem services that billions of people depend on, often without realizing it. The Amazon matters not as Earth's lungs, but as its beating heart. Forests can reduce noise pollution by absorbing sound waves. Trees don't just please the eye, they create acoustic environments that soothe the ear. Forest vegetation absorbs, deflects, and refracts sound waves, reducing noise levels significantly. Leaves, branches, and trunks scatter sound energy, while soft forest floor materials like moss and leaf litter absorb it. A dense tree belt can reduce noise by 5 to 10 decibels, which is perceived as cutting the sound volume roughly in half. This is why forests near highways, airports, and industrial areas serve as natural sound barriers. Beyond physical sound absorption, forests also mask unwanted noise with their own pleasant sounds. Rustling leaves, birdsong, flowing water, and wind through branches create natural soundscapes that our brains process as calming rather than intrusive. Studies show that people recover from stress more quickly when exposed to natural sounds compared to mechanical noise. Urban planners increasingly recognize the acoustic value of city forests and street trees, planting them strategically to create quieter, more peaceful neighborhoods. In a world growing louder, forests offer islands of acoustic refuge, places where the constant hum of civilization fades into whispers and birdsong. A tree's rings tell the story of its entire life and the climate it experienced. Slice through a tree trunk and you'll find a detailed autobiography written in wood. Each ring represents 1 year of growth, formed as the tree adds new layers of cells beneath its bark. In spring, when water is abundant and growth is rapid, cells are large and light-colored. In summer and fall, as growth slows, cells become smaller and darker, creating the visible boundary between rings. By counting rings, you can determine a tree's exact age, but rings reveal much more than years lived. Wide rings indicate favorable growing conditions with ample water and warmth, while narrow rings suggest drought, cold, or insect damage. Scarred or missing rings mark fires or injuries the tree survived. By comparing ring patterns across many trees from the same region, scientists reconstruct climate histories stretching back thousands of years, tracking droughts, floods, temperature changes, and even volcanic eruptions that cooled the planet and slowed growth. This science, called dendrochronology, has helped date archaeological sites, understand past climate shifts, and predict future patterns. Every tree is a witness to history, silently recording the world's changes in the concentric circles of its being. Some forests grow on soil that's barely a few inches thick. You might assume forests need deep, rich soil to thrive, but some of the world's most impressive forests grow in astonishingly sparse conditions. Coastal rainforests in British Columbia and Alaska tower over rocky terrain where soil depth rarely exceeds a few inches. These temperate rainforests receive so much rainfall that nutrients wash away constantly. Yet massive spruce and hemlock trees thrive. They accomplish this through several strategies. Their roots spread horizontally rather than digging deep, extracting nutrients from the thin organic layer of decomposing leaves and wood. Fungi extend their reach even further, accessing minerals in rock crevices. When trees fall, they become nurse logs, their slowly rotting wood providing elevated nutrient-rich substrate where seedlings establish. Some trees even grow directly on the trunks of fallen predecessors, their roots eventually reaching past the nurse log to the mineral soil or rock below. These forests demonstrate that depth of soil matters less than efficient nutrient cycling and adaptation. Life finds ways to flourish even in unlikely places, building richness from scarcity through patience, cooperation, and the alchemy of decay, transforming into growth. Forests are home to trees that are older than human civilization. While bristlecone pines hold records for individual longevity, many forestry species routinely live longer than entire human civilizations have existed. Ancient yews in European churchyards may be 2,000 to 5,000 years old, their hollow trunks making precise aging difficult. Giant sequoias in California's Sierra Nevada regularly exceed 3,000 years, having witnessed the rise and fall of empires from Bronze Age cultures to modern nations. These ancient individuals were already old when Rome was founded, mature when Christ walked the earth, and towering giants when Columbus reached the Americas. To stand before such a tree is to confront deep time in living form, to touch bark that has felt millennia of rain and sun, to shelter beneath branches that have weathered countless storms. These elders have seen climate shifts, fire cycles, and the slow dance of forest succession play out dozens or hundreds of times. They've survived because of fortunate location, resilient genetics, and pure chance. Each one that remains is irreplaceable, a living connection to a past long vanished, a reminder that some lives move on timescales that humble our fleeting human generations. Deforestation in one part of the world affects rainfall thousands of miles away. Forests don't only influence local weather, their atmospheric effects ripple across continents and oceans. When tropical forests transpire, they release moisture that forms clouds and generates rain. But this moisture doesn't just fall back on the same forest. Wind currents carry it hundreds or thousands of miles, creating rainfall in distant regions. Scientists have discovered that deforestation in the Amazon reduces rainfall in the American Midwest, while forest loss in Central Africa affects precipitation in Europe. These flying rivers of atmospheric moisture follow predictable patterns, and disrupting them by clearing forests has consequences far from the cutting zone. Agricultural regions that seem unconnected to distant forests may actually depend on them for consistent rainfall. This interconnection means that forest conservation is not just a local or national issue, but a global imperative. What happens to a rainforest in the Congo or the Amazon affects farmers in Kansas or breadbaskets in India. The atmosphere connects all forests and all people in a web of moisture and consequence, where actions in one place cascade through the climate system to touch lives thousands of miles away. Trees growing near each other sometimes fuse their root systems together. In dense forests, the roots of neighboring trees occasionally grow into contact with each other and, remarkably, can graft together naturally, creating shared vascular systems. Through these root grafts, trees can directly exchange water, nutrients, and even genetic material. This connection is most common between members of the same species, but cross-species grafting has been documented. Root grafting creates both cooperation and competition. Trees may support struggling neighbors, but can also transmit diseases like root rot throughout a connected network. Sometimes a stump of a felled tree will remain alive for years or even decades, sustained by nutrients from nearby trees whose roots fused with it when both were living. These grafted networks blur the boundaries between individuals, creating superorganisms where multiple trees function partially as one. The forest becomes less a collection of separate beings and more a physically connected community, literally bound together underground in a demonstration of interdependence that challenges our notion of where one tree ends and another begins. Life in the forest is shared at the most fundamental level. Forests can regenerate naturally after massive disturbances like wildfires or logging. Nature possesses remarkable resilience, and forests demonstrate this powerfully through their ability to recover from catastrophic damage. After wildfire sweeps through, or after clear-cut, logging, the forest doesn't simply disappear. Seeds buried in soil or stored in the canopy germinate in the newly opened space. Wind carries seeds from surviving trees nearby. Birds and animals cache seeds that sprout. Forest bathing has measurable health benefits for humans. The Japanese practice of Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing, simply means spending time in forests, but research shows it produces significant physiological benefits. People who walk in forests for even 20 minutes show reduced levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, compared to those walking in urban environments. Forest exposure lowers blood pressure, reduces heart rate, improves mood, and boosts immune function. Some benefits come from breathing phytoncides, those aromatic compounds trees release, which increase our production of natural killer cells that fight infections and cancer. Other benefits arise from the psychological effects of natural settings: reduced mental fatigue, enhanced creativity, improved attention, and decreased anxiety and depression symptoms. The forest engages our senses with complex stimuli that our brains evolved to process easily, unlike the harsh, monotonous inputs of urban environments. Colors, sounds, textures, and scents in forests all contribute to what researchers call restorative environments that allow our minds to rest and recover. As modern life becomes increasingly indoor and digital, forests offer a biological homecoming, environments our bodies and minds recognize as fundamentally nourishing and safe. Ancient forests contain massive amounts of carbon in their soil, not just their trees. When we think of forest carbon storage, we picture wood and leaves, but the soil beneath old-growth forests holds even more. Forest soils, especially in ancient forests undisturbed for centuries, accumulate deep layers of organic matter, fallen leaves, dead roots, fungal networks, and partially decomposed wood. These carbon-rich materials build up over time, creating soils that can contain twice as much carbon as the standing trees above. In tropical peatland forests, where decomposition is slow due to waterlogged conditions, soil carbon can reach depths of 30 feet or more, storing carbon that accumulated over thousands of years. When forests are logged or converted to agriculture, this soil carbon rapidly oxidizes and escapes to the atmosphere, often releasing more greenhouse gases than the harvested trees themselves. Disturbing the soil through plowing or drainage accelerates this release. Protecting old-growth forests therefore protects not just the trees, but enormous carbon reservoirs hidden underground. Restoring degraded forest soils takes centuries, making preservation of existing old-growth forests among the most effective climate strategies available. The ground beneath our feet holds climate secrets that rival those of the canopy above. Some forests have existed continuously in the same location for millions of years. While individual trees are mortal, certain forest ecosystems have persisted in their locations for extraordinary spans of time. The Daintree rainforest in Australia has existed continuously for at least 135 million years, making it the oldest surviving rainforest on Earth. It dates back to the age of dinosaurs and has witnessed the breakup of continents, the rise and fall of countless species, and dramatic climate shifts. These ancient forests served as refugia during ice ages and dry periods, maintaining tropical conditions in small areas while surrounding landscapes transformed. The Daintree contains primitive flowering plant species found nowhere else, living fossils that demonstrate what early forests looked like. Similarly, temperate rainforests in Tasmania and southern Chile have existed for tens of millions of years, while tropical forests in Borneo and the Amazon basin have maintained continuous forest cover for millions of years. Though their composition shifted, these ancient refugia are biodiversity treasure houses, containing species and genetic lineages that represent hundreds of millions of years of evolution. To walk in such forests is to step into ecosystems older than mountains, more enduring than civilizations, survivors of Earth's countless transformations. Dead trees are as important to forest ecosystems as living ones. When a tree dies, its contribution to the forest ecosystem is far from over. Standing dead trees, called snags, provide crucial habitat for cavity nesting birds like woodpeckers, owls, and chickadees. As decay progresses, fungi and insects colonize the softening wood, creating food sources for other creatures. Eventually, the snag falls, becoming a nurse log on the forest floor, where its slow decomposition releases nutrients and provides substrate for seedlings. A single large log might take a century or more to fully decompose, during that time serving as habitat for salamanders, small mammals, insects, and fungi. The moisture trapped in rotting wood creates microhabitats critical for many species. In healthy forests, dead wood in various stages of decay is abundant, representing decades or centuries of accumulated material. This woody debris is so important that foresters now recognize it as a key indicator of forest health, and management practices increasingly leave dead trees standing and fallen logs in place, rather than removing them. Death in the forest is not an end, but a transformation, a continuation of giving that sustains the next generation of life. Forests influence regional temperatures through their dark color and rough texture. Forests don't just create local shade, they affect entire regional climates through their physical properties. From space, forests appear darker than grasslands, fields or ice, meaning they absorb more sunlight rather than reflecting it back to space. This darker color, called low albedo, warms the local atmosphere, particularly important in northern boreal forests, where trees growing on snow create dramatic temperature differences compared to open tundra. However, forests also cool regions through evapotranspiration and by creating rougher surfaces that generate turbulence in the atmosphere, mixing warm surface air with cooler air aloft. The net effect depends on latitude and forest type. Tropical forests produce strong cooling through moisture release. Temperate forests create moderate effects. Boreal forests might actually warm their regions slightly due to their low albedo on snow, though they still provide crucial carbon storage and other ecosystem services. Scientists studying climate change must account for these complex effects when modeling what happens as forests expand, shrink, or change composition. The color and texture of Earth's green mantle matters to climate in subtle but significant ways that we're still learning to measure and understand. Certain tree species can only reproduce after their seeds pass through an animal's digestive system. Many trees have evolved fascinating partnerships with animals where reproduction depends entirely on being eaten. Trees produce fleshy, nutritious fruits that attract birds, bats, bears, or monkeys. These animals consume the fruit and seeds together, digest the fruit pulp, and excrete the seeds, often miles away from the parent tree. This provides two crucial benefits: seed dispersal to new locations and passage through digestive systems that scarifies hard seed coats, improving germination rates. Some seeds won't germinate at all without this treatment. The acids and enzymes in animal guts wear down chemical or physical barriers on seeds that would otherwise prevent sprouting. Certain tropical trees depend entirely on specific animal species for reproduction. When those animals go extinct or decline, the trees cannot successfully reproduce, even if adult trees remain healthy. This tight coevolution between trees and their dispersers shows how interconnected forest ecosystems are. Remove one thread, the animal partner, and another thread, the tree species, eventually unravels. The forest is held together by thousands of such relationships, invisible partnerships that make the whole system function. Forests create their own unique weather inside the canopy. Step into a dense forest, and you enter a different microclimate from the surrounding landscape. The canopy intercepts up to 40% of rainfall, which either evaporates back into the air or drips slowly to the ground, creating more consistent moisture conditions than outside the forest. Temperature extremes are moderated. Forests stay cooler in summer and warmer in winter, with smaller daily temperature swings. Humidity is higher as trees constantly transpire. Wind speed drops dramatically, with the canopy acting as a barrier that can reduce wind to nearly zero at ground level. Light quality changes too, filtered through leaves. It becomes diffused and green-tinted. These conditions create distinct habitats within the forest at different heights. The canopy experiences full sun, high winds, and temperature extremes. The understory is shaded, calm, and humid. The forest floor is dark, cool, and stable. Different plants and animals specialize in each layer, evolving to exploit these microclimatic niches. The forest generates its own weather system, a self-created environment that persists regardless of conditions outside its borders, an island of specialized climate in a variable world. Some mushrooms growing in forests can glow in the dark through bioluminescence. Walking through certain forests at night, you might encounter an eerie green glow emanating from decaying logs or the forest floor. About 80 species of mushrooms produce their own light through chemical reactions, a phenomenon called bioluminescence. The light comes from a compound called luciferin, reacting with oxygen in the dew, presence of an enzyme, producing a cool glow without heat. Scientists aren't entirely certain why mushrooms evolved this ability, but current theories suggest the light attracts insects that help disperse spores, similar to how flowers attract pollinators with colors. The most famous glowing mushroom is the honey mushroom, whose mycelium creates foxfire, a ghostly luminescence in rotting wood that has mystified humans for millennia. In some forests, particularly in tropical regions, bioluminescent fungi create spectacular displays, with entire logs glowing bright enough to read by. These glowing mushrooms remind us that forests contain magic we're still discovering, that the night woods are not dark and lifeless, but full of subtle lights and strange chemistries, invisible wonders waiting for the right moment, an observer to reveal themselves. Forests act as natural water towers, slowly releasing moisture during dry periods. Mountains covered in forests serve as critical water storage systems for communities downstream. When rain or snow falls on forested slopes, the canopy and forest floor absorb and hold moisture like a giant sponge. Rather than rushing immediately downhill, water infiltrates the soil, percolates through layers of roots and organic matter, and gradually feeds into springs, streams, and groundwater. During dry seasons, forests slowly release this stored water, maintaining stream flow when rain has stopped. Rivers draining forested watersheds show more stable flows throughout the year compared to deforested watersheds, which experience flash floods during storms and drought during dry periods. This natural flow regulation reduces flood risk, ensures consistent water supplies, and maintains aquatic habitats. Many cities worldwide depend on forested mountain watersheds for their water supply. The value of this service is enormous, estimated at billions of dollars annually. When forests are cleared, downstream communities face water shortages, expensive infrastructure to capture and store runoff, and increased flooding. Protecting mountain forests means protecting water security for millions of people who may live far from those forests, but depend absolutely on their hydrological services. Trees can share nutrients with different tree species through fungal networks. The underground fungal networks connecting trees are not exclusive clubs. Fungi can link different species of trees, creating interspecies nutrient-sharing highways. Research in forests has shown that resources flow between birch and Douglas fir, between maple and pine, between trees that compete for light above ground but cooperate below ground. In mixed species forests, this sharing may help maintain diversity by allowing species with different strategies to coexist. Shade-tolerant species surviving in the understory might receive carbon from sun-loving species in the canopy, while those same canopy trees benefit from nutrients that shade-adapted species are better at extracting from soil. Older trees support younger ones, even of different species, potentially mentoring the next generation of the forest. The fungal network facilitates these exchanges, taking a fee of sugars for its brokerage services while connecting the whole community. This interspecies cooperation challenges simplistic views of nature as purely competitive. In the forest, competition and cooperation exist simultaneously, with trees engaging in both depending on circumstances. The underground economy is more socialist than capitalist, redistributing resources to maintain the health of the entire system. Some forests have their own specific species found nowhere else on Earth. Certain forests, particularly on isolated islands or in unique geological settings, have developed species that exist nowhere else in the world. These endemic species evolved in isolation, adapting to local conditions over millions of years. Madagascar's forests contain thousands of endemic species, including lemurs, chameleons, and unique trees found only there. Hawaii's forests once hosted hundreds of endemic bird species, though many are now extinct. Cloud forests in isolated mountains often harbor unique species restricted to a single mountain range, or even a single peak. These endemic species are irreplaceable. If their forest is destroyed, they vanish forever, taking with them unique genetic information and evolutionary stories that can never be recovered. Endemic species are also often highly specialized, and thus vulnerable to change. A bird that feeds on one specific tree species cannot switch to another if that tree disappears. Protecting forests with high endemism is a conservation priority because these ecosystems represent evolutionary experiments that happened nowhere else. Unique solutions to the challenges of survival that expand the diversity of life on Earth. Losing them diminishes not just local biodiversity, but the entire planet's biological wealth. The forest canopy is so dense in some places that rain never reaches the ground. In the wettest tropical rainforests, the canopy forms such a complete ceiling that water falling as rain might never reach the forest floor directly. Instead, rain lands on the topmost leaves, flows along branches, drips from layer to layer through the understory, and evaporates back into the air before completing the journey downward. Studies show that up to 50% of rainfall in some tropical forests is intercepted by vegetation and evaporated, never reaching the soil. This intercepted rain isn't wasted. The moisture re-enters the atmosphere locally, contributing to cloud formation and afternoon rain showers, creating a tight water recycling loop. The forest essentially irrigates itself, pulling moisture from the air, condensing it on leaves, and releasing it again in an endless cycle. This interception also means that the forest floor in dense rainforests can be relatively dry even during rainy season, with most moisture held in the vegetation above. The multiple canopy layers create a cascade of drip zones, each with its own humidity and light characteristics. The forest becomes a vertical moisture gradient, with wetness concentrating aloft and relative dryness below. Another example of how forests create their own interior environments independent of outside conditions. Forests can recover from ice ages by migrating across continents. During glacial periods, ice sheets expanded from the poles, covering vast areas where forests previously grew. Trees couldn't survive under ice, so forests retreated to warmer refugia. But forests didn't simply wait passively for climate to change. As ice ages ended and temperatures warmed, forests migrated, spreading northward at rates up to several hundred meters per year. This might sound impossible. How can a forest move? Yet it happens through successive generations. Trees at the northern edge of the forest produce seeds that disperse forward into newly suitable habitat. Those seedlings establish, grow, and produce their own seeds. pushing the forest boundary further north. Meanwhile, at the southern edge, changing climate makes conditions less suitable, and trees fail to reproduce successfully, causing the forest to retreat from the south while expanding northward. The result is a wave of forest moving across the landscape over thousands of years. Pollen cores from lake sediments track these migrations, showing how different tree species moved at different speeds and routes as they followed favorable climates northward after the last ice age. Forests are not static. They flow across continents like slow green glaciers, adapting to planetary climate shifts through migration. Time. 5. Some trees can live with more than 90% of their trunk dead. Bristlecone pines and other long-lived trees often persist as narrow strips of living tissue on otherwise completely dead trunks. A tree that was once 2 feet in diameter might have only a 2-inch wide stripe of living bark and sapwood connecting its roots to a few living branches, with the rest of the trunk dead, weathered wood. This survival strategy allows trees in harsh environments to persist during extreme conditions. When drought or cold strikes, portions of the tree die back, reducing water and nutrient demands. The remaining living tissue concentrates resources in the surviving portions. These strip bark forms can persist for thousands of years, growing incredibly slowly but enduring. The dead wood doesn't decay quickly in arid, cold environments, so it provides structural support for the living portions. Some ancient trees are more dead than alive by volume, yet continue producing seeds and new growth from their tiny remaining living sections. This demonstrates remarkable biological efficiency and resilience. Life doesn't require abundance. Sometimes bare survival, concentrated in the smallest essential core, is enough to persist through millennia. The forest teaches that survival sometimes means letting most of yourself go. Forests provide livelihoods for more than 1 billion people worldwide. Beyond their ecological importance, forests are home and workplace to over 1 billion people who depend directly on them for food, shelter, medicine, and income. Indigenous peoples have lived in and managed forests for thousands of years, developing sophisticated knowledge of forest ecology and sustainable use practices. Hundreds of millions more people worldwide collect firewood, harvest timber, gather medicinal plants, hunt game, and farm in forest clearings. Forests provide rubber, fruits, nuts, resins, and countless non-timber products that sustain rural economies. For many communities, especially in tropical regions, forests represent their pharmacy, hardware store, and supermarket combined. When forests are degraded or destroyed, these communities lose not just resources, but cultural identity, traditional knowledge, and economic security. Conversely, many studies show that forests managed by indigenous communities remain healthier and more biodiverse than those managed by governments or corporations. Recognizing and protecting the rights of forest-dependent peoples is therefore both a social justice issue and a conservation strategy. The fate of forests and the fate of forest peoples are inseparable, linked by thousands of years of coevolution and mutual dependence. Trees can warn each other about insect attacks through airborne chemical signals. When a tree is attacked by insects, it doesn't suffer silently. Within minutes, it begins releasing volatile organic compounds into the air, chemical distress signals that neighboring trees can detect. Upon sensing these warning molecules, nearby trees preemptively increase production of defensive chemicals in their own leaves, preparing for attack before insects even arrive. This airborne communication has been documented in numerous species, including willows, poplars, pines, and many others. The warning chemicals are specific enough that trees can identify the type of threat and tailor their response accordingly. Different insect species trigger different defensive compounds. Some trees release attractants for predatory insects when under attack, essentially calling in reinforcements. The chemical vocabulary of trees is sophisticated and targeted. Researchers have even shown that trees can distinguish between random leaf damage and insect feeding, responding only to actual threats. This reveals forests as constantly communicating communities where information flows not just through underground fungal networks, but through the air itself, in scented messages too subtle for humans to perceive, but vital for survival in the wooden world. The largest living organism on Earth is a fungus growing in a forest. While trees are impressive, the largest known living organism is actually a fungus living in Oregon's Malheur National Forest. This honey fungus, Armillaria ostoyi, covers 2,285 acres and is estimated to be between 2,400 and 8,650 years old. Most of its biomass exists underground as a network of filaments called mycelium that spread through the soil and penetrate tree roots, slowly killing them and feeding on the dead wood. Above ground, it produces occasional clusters of honey-colored mushrooms, but these are merely the fruiting bodies of the vast organism below. The entire network is a single genetic individual, a clone that has expanded slowly outward over millennia. This enormous fungus demonstrates that our typical understanding of organism size is limited. We think of trees as large, but they're dwarfed by the microbial networks beneath their roots. The forest we see is underlain by an even larger forest we don't see, woven of fungal threads instead of wood and leaves. Life's greatest expressions of size and longevity might be invisible, existing in dimensions of earth and soil, rather than air and light. Forests buffer against extreme weather events, like hurricanes and floods. Coastal forests, particularly mangroves, provide critical protection against storms and tsunamis. The dense network of trunks, roots, and vegetation slows waves and wind, dissipating energy before it reaches communities inland. Studies after the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami showed that villages behind intact mangrove forests suffered far less damage and fewer deaths than those where mangroves had been cleared for development. Similarly, inland forests reduce flood risk by absorbing rainfall and slowing runoff. During hurricanes, forested areas experience less wind damage to structures than cleared areas because trees break up airflow and create turbulence that reduces wind speeds. Even individual trees in cities reduce flooding by intercepting rain and promoting infiltration. This protective service is economically enormous. Coastal forests provide billions of dollars worth of storm protection that would require expensive seawalls and levees to replace. Yet these forests are often cleared for development or aquaculture, eliminating the natural protection they provide. Recognizing forests as infrastructure, as natural defenses that complement or replace built structures, is increasingly important as climate change intensifies storms and floods worldwide. Time tends. Some forest trees take different forms depending on competition and growing conditions. The same tree species can look dramatically different depending on where it grows. A Douglas fir growing in dense forest develops a tall, straight trunk with minimal branching, racing upward to reach sunlight in competition with neighbors. The same species growing alone in an open field develops a completely different form, short, wide-branching, and cone-shaped, spreading laterally without competition. This phenomenon, called phenotypic plasticity, allows trees to optimize their form for local conditions. Trees in windy coastal areas grow low and twisted, minimizing wind resistance. Those on fertile soil grow quickly with large leaves, while the same species on poor soil grows slowly with small, tough leaves. Even within a single tree, leaves in full sun at the top of the canopy are smaller and thicker than shade-adapted leaves on lower branches. This flexibility allows trees to thrive across varying environments, but it also means that a species' potential isn't fixed. The shape and size of a tree reflects not just its genetics, but its entire life history of environmental conditions, neighbors, and opportunities. Form follows function in the forest, and function varies endlessly. Forests can take hundreds of years to fully recover their old growth characteristics, while a cleared forest can regenerate tree cover within decades. Developing true old growth characteristics takes centuries. Old growth forests have specific features: large living trees of various ages, standing dead trees in multiple stages of decay, massive fallen logs, a multi-layered canopy, and complex understory vegetation. These features develop slowly. Trees need time to grow large. Dead wood accumulates gradually as individual trees die and fall. Soil organic matter builds up over centuries of leaves, roots, and logs decomposing. The wildlife community shifts too, as species requiring large hollow trees, extensive deadwood, or deep forest conditions colonize. Scientists estimate that 200 to 500 years are needed for a forest to regain old growth characteristics in temperate regions, longer in slow-growing boreal forests. This means that old growth lost today cannot be replaced within multiple human lifespans. It represents an ecological legacy we can destroy quickly, but cannot restore quickly. This temporal mismatch makes old growth forests especially valuable, and their protection especially urgent. Once gone, these ancient forests and the specialized species they contain disappear for centuries at minimum, effectively forever from a human perspective. Trees can bend light through the structure of their leaves. The way leaves are arranged and structured affects how light penetrates the forest canopy. Many tree species angle their leaves to optimize light capture, while avoiding overheating. Some leaves orient vertically during midday to reduce sun exposure. Others arrange themselves in patterns that minimize shading of lower leaves on the same plant. The thickness, texture, and surface properties of leaves all influence how light transmits, reflects, or absorbs. Waxy surfaces reflect more light, while matte surfaces absorb more. Translucent leaves allow light to filter through, creating the dappled patterns characteristic of forests. Some plants have evolved leaves that act like fiber optic cables, channeling light to photosynthetic tissues deeper inside. The collective effect of billions of leaves creates the distinct light environment of the forest understory, a greenish filtered glow where intensity is only 1% to 2% of full sunlight, but quality is optimized for shade-adapted plants. This manipulation of light is a quiet engineering marvel, each leaf positioned and structured to harvest energy while contributing to the optical properties of the entire canopy. The forest bends light to its purposes, painting the world below in shades of living green. Forest fires can be beneficial and necessary for certain forest ecosystems. While fire seems destructive, many forests evolved with fire as a regular occurrence and depend on it for health. In fire-adapted forests like longleaf pine savannas or ponderosa pine forests, low-intensity ground fires historically burned every few years, consuming accumulated needles and brush while leaving mature trees unharmed. These fires prevented fuel buildup, cleared space for new seedlings, released nutrients locked in organic matter, and created habitat diversity. Some seeds require fire to germinate. Certain pine cones only open when exposed to high heat, releasing seeds into the ash-enriched soil after fire passes. Aspen and other species resprout vigorously after fire, rejuvenating aging stands. Fire creates meadows and openings that increase plant and animal diversity. However, when fire is suppressed for decades, fuel accumulators to dangerous levels, and eventual fires burn catastrophically hot, killing even fire-resistant trees and sterilizing soil. Native Americans understood this, using controlled burning to manage forests for thousands of years. Modern forest management increasingly recognizes that appropriate fire is medicine for fire-adapted ecosystems, while fire exclusion is a slow poison that makes forests sick and vulnerable. Some forests exist entirely in fog zones where rain rarely falls. Certain forests thrive in places that receive almost no rainfall, surviving instead on moisture from fog. Coastal redwood forests of California demonstrate this beautifully. During summer, little rain falls, but dense fog rolls in from the Pacific Ocean. As fog condenses on needles and drips to the ground, it provides up to 40% of the water redwoods need. Similarly, cloud forests in tropical mountains exist in zones where clouds constantly shroud the landscape. The trees are festooned with epiphytes, plants that grow on branches and intercept moisture directly from the air. These mosses, lichens, and ferns drip constantly, creating rainfall from fog. Researchers have measured how certain trees enhance fog drip, their needle structure and branching patterns optimized to condense moisture. In some cases, fog interception provides more water than actual rainfall. These fog forests are climate specialists, existing in narrow bands where conditions are just right. Climate change threatens them by shifting fog patterns and raising cloud heights. Some cloud forests are already drying as their signature clouds rise above the forest canopy, leaving trees stranded below the moisture they depend on. These forests remind us that precipitation is not just rain, and that invisible moisture sustains some of Earth's most unique ecosystems. Forests help stabilize slopes and prevent landslides through root reinforcement. On steep hillsides, forests provide critical anchoring that prevents catastrophic slope failures. Tree roots penetrate deep into soil and fractured rock, creating a three-dimensional web of reinforcement. Large structural roots extend horizontally and vertically, effectively pinning the soil to stable bedrock below. Fine roots fill spaces between soil particles, binding them together like rebar in concrete. This root reinforcement dramatically increases slope stability. Studies show that forested slopes can be 10,000 times more stable than bare slopes of similar angle and soil type. When forests are removed, roots decay within a few years, and the soil loses its reinforcement. This creates a delayed landslide hazard, with failures often occurring 5 to 15 years after logging, when roots have decomposed, but new vegetation hasn't yet developed comparable root strength. Tragic examples worldwide show communities buried by landslides following deforestation upslope. In mountainous regions prone to earthquakes or heavy rainfall, Maintaining forest cover on steep slopes is a critical safety measure. The trees hold the mountains together in a literal sense, their roots stitching soil to stone in a living fabric that prevents the earth from sliding into valleys below. Forests are critical habitats for pollinators, including bees, butterflies, and beetles. While we often associate pollinators with flower gardens and agricultural fields, forests provide essential habitat for the majority of pollinator species. Wild bees nest in dead wood, hollow stems, and leaf litter. Butterflies require specific forest plants for their caterpillars to feed on. Many beetles, flies, and other pollinating insects depend on forest flowers, particularly those that bloom in spring before the canopy fully leaves out. Forest edges and canopy gaps create patches of abundant flowering that support pollinator populations. These forest pollinators don't just stay in the woods, they travel to surrounding agricultural areas, providing free pollination services to crops. Studies show that crop yields are higher near forests because wild pollinators supplement or replace honeybees. As honeybee populations face challenges from disease and pesticides, wild pollinators become even more important. Protecting forests therefore supports agricultural productivity, in addition to all the other services forests provide. The connection reminds us that ecosystems don't exist in isolation. What happens in the forest affects the farm, and healthy pollinator populations require diverse landscapes that include both forest and field, wild and cultivated, the seamless integration of nature and human activity. Trees can alter soil chemistry to favor their own species. Some tree species engineer their environment to advantage themselves and their offspring over competitors. Certain pines acidify soil through their acidic needle litter, creating conditions where competing hardwoods struggle, but pine seedlings thrive. Black walnut trees produce a chemical compound called juglone that inhibits the growth of many other plant species, suppressing competition near walnut roots. Eucalyptus trees drop highly flammable leaves that encourage fire, which kills competing species, but which eucalyptus can survive and re-sprout from. Nitrogen-fixing trees like alder and locust enrich soil with nitrogen, but this enrichment may eventually favor other species that outcompete them, leading to succession. These chemical warfare and engineering strategies show that trees actively manipulate their environment rather than passively accepting conditions. The forest is a slow-motion battlefield where chemical, weapons, resource monopolization, and environmental engineering determine winners and losers over timescales of decades and centuries. Beneath the peaceful appearance lies intense competition, with each species deploying strategies refined by millions of years of evolution. The soil itself is shaped by this struggle, its pH, nutrient content, and chemistry reflecting the outcomes of countless plant conflicts fought underground. Forests influence the formation of clouds and can trigger their own rain. Trees don't just receive weather, they help create it. Through transpiration, forests release moisture and aerosols into the atmosphere. These aerosols, tiny particles of organic compounds, serve as condensation nuclei around which water vapor can condense to form cloud droplets. Without these particles, water vapor has difficulty condensing and clouds form less readily. Studies show that air masses passing over forests generate more clouds than those over cleared land. The additional moisture from transpiration further enhances cloud formation. Once clouds form, they may produce rain that falls back on the forest, creating a feedback loop. In the Amazon, scientists have documented that deforestation reduces cloud cover and rainfall, even in nearby intact forests, disrupting the region's water cycle. The ability of forests to seed clouds means they're active participants in the water cycle, not passive recipients. They pump moisture upward, provide the particles needed for condensation, and influence where and when rain falls. This cloud seeding service is another way forests regulate climate at scales from local to continental, shaping not just what happens beneath their canopy, but what happens in the sky above. Some forests grow in swamps, where trees have special adaptations for waterlogged soil. Not all forests grow on dry land. Swamp forests, found in wetlands and floodplains, thrive in permanently or seasonally waterlogged soils where most trees would drown. These trees have evolved remarkable adaptations. Bald cypress and mangroves produce new metaphors, specialized roots that grow upward out of the water, allowing the tree to breathe oxygen even when its roots are submerged. These knees or prop roots create distinctive landscapes in swamp forests. The wood of swamp trees often contains air-filled chambers that aid in oxygen transport to submerged roots. Many swamp species have buttressed trunks, flared bases that provide stability in soft, unstable mud. Swamp forests provide critical ecosystem services, filtering water, absorbing floodwaters, providing wildlife habitat, and storing carbon in waterlogged soils where decomposition is slow. Peatland forests in Indonesia and the Congo Basin store enormous amounts of carbon in their waterlogged soils. Draining these swamps for agriculture or development releases that stored carbon and eliminates their water filtration and flood control functions. Swamp forests remind us that forests adapt to almost any condition, thriving even where it seems impossible, their ingenuity expressed in breathing roots and buttressed trunks. Ancient forests contain species that cannot survive in younger forests. Old-growth forests harbor specialist species that require specific conditions found only in ancient forests. Spotted owls need large diameter trees with cavities for nesting. Certain lichens grow only on the bark of trees over 200 years old. Some salamanders depend on large rotting logs that take a century to develop the right moisture and decay characteristics. Flying squirrels require networks of connected canopy and large dead trees with cavities. As forests age, they develop structural complexity that young forests lack. Standing dead trees of various sizes, enormous fallen logs in multiple stages of decay, layered canopies, and deep accumulations of organic matter. This complexity creates niches for specialized species. When old growth is cut and replaced by young plantations or second growth forests, these specialists disappear because their habitat requirements cannot be met for centuries. Even if young forests are protected and allowed to age, the intervening period represents a gap during which specialist species may go extinct locally or regionally. Protecting remaining old growth isn't just about preserving trees. It's about maintaining irreplaceable habitat for species that have no other options, creatures whose evolutionary strategies require the specific conditions that only time, patience, and nature's uninterrupted work can create. Forests can survive on surprisingly little sunlight in extreme northern latitudes. Near the Arctic Circle, forests face extreme conditions. Winter brings months of darkness when photosynthesis is impossible. Summer brings continuous daylight, but at low angles that reduce light intensity. Temperatures remain cold, soils are often frozen, and the growing season may last only a few weeks. Yet boreal forests of spruce, pine, and larch survive, and even thrive. They accomplish this through extreme efficiency and adaptation. Boreal trees maximize photosynthesis during brief summers, growing rapidly when conditions allow. They've evolved dark green needles that absorb maximum light even at low intensities. Their conical shapes shed snow and present minimal wind resistance. Many species are evergreen, keeping their needles year-round so they can begin photosynthesis immediately when light returns rather than waiting to grow new leaves. Permafrost prevents deep rooting, so trees develop shallow, wide-spreading root systems. These adaptations allow forests to exist farther north than seems possible, nearly to 70 degrees latitude in some areas. They demonstrate life's tenacity and flexibility, the ability to eke out existence in marginal conditions through countless small optimizations, pushing the boundaries of where trees can grow toward the very limit of what sunlight, warmth, and water can support. Trees sometimes adopt orphaned seedlings from other species. The maternal behavior of mother trees extends beyond their own offspring. Research shows that large trees sometimes support seedlings of entirely different species, sharing carbon and nutrients through mycorrhizal networks. A massive Douglas fir might feed struggling hemlock seedlings in its understory. Birch trees support young spruce. This cross-species fostering benefits the forest community by maintaining diversity and ensuring regeneration continues even when certain species face poor seed years. The reasons for this altruism are still debated. It might be purely incidental. The fungal network doesn't discriminate between tree species when transferring nutrients, or it might provide indirect benefits. Diverse forests are more resilient to pests and disease, so supporting different species might ultimately benefit the entire community, including the fostering tree. Regardless of mechanism, the effect is clear. Forests are not rigid monocultures, where each species looks after only its own. Instead, they're flexible communities where resources flow across species boundaries, where the large support the small, and where survival depends on maintaining the health of the whole system. This communal resource sharing blurs the lines between competition and cooperation, self-interest and community welfare. Forests can recover from insect outbreaks that kill millions of trees. Massive insect outbreaks can sweep through forests, killing trees across thousands of square miles in what appears to be ecological catastrophe. Bark beetles, spruce budworms, and gypsy moths have all caused such events, yet forests recover. Dead standing trees provide crucial wildlife habitat. As they fall, they contribute to soil nutrients. The opened canopy allows sunlight to reach seedlings and understory plants that had been suppressed, triggering rapid growth. Within years, the forest floor is thick with regeneration. Diverse species establish, creating more varied forest structure than existed before the outbreak. Insect outbreaks are natural disturbances that have occurred for millennia, and forests evolved with them. In fact, outbreaks may benefit forest health by thinning overly dense stands, removing weak or diseased trees, and resetting succession to more diverse stages. Problems arise when human activities amplify natural disturbance patterns, when climate change extends insect ranges, or when fire suppression creates continuous forests of similar age trees that provide ideal conditions for outbreak spread. Natural outbreak patterns are part of forest dynamics, the long breath of systems that regenerate through cycles of death and renewal. The roots of most forest trees only extend a few feet deep, despite their height. Tall trees give the impression of corresponding deep roots, but the reality is different. Most tree roots grow in the top 3 feet of soil, where oxygen, nutrients, and moisture are most abundant. Even massive trees rarely have roots extending deeper than 10 feet. Instead of growing deep, tree roots spread wide, often extending far beyond the drip line of the canopy, sometimes 2 to 3 times the width of the crown. This horizontal root network provides stability through sheer breadth rather than depth, anchoring the tree like guy wires on a radio tower. The architecture makes sense. Deeper soils are often poorly oxygenated, compacted, or lacking in nutrients. The action is in the topsoil, where decomposition releases nutrients and rain infiltrates. Shallow rooting does make trees vulnerable to drought when surface soils dry out, and to wind throw on shallow soils. But the benefits of accessing rich topsoil resources outweigh the risks in most environments. This hidden architecture reminds us that appearances deceive. The tallest structures in the forest are rooted surprisingly shallow, held upright not by deep penetration, but by wide networks of cooperation and horizontal spread. Forests provide natural temperature regulation for nearby cities and towns. Urban heat islands, where cities are significantly warmer than surrounding rural areas, are a growing problem as climate warms. Forests near cities provide powerful cooling effects. Trees shade buildings and pavement, reducing heat absorption. Transpiration releases moisture that cools the air through evaporation. Even small urban forests or tree-lined streets can reduce temperatures by 2 to 5 degrees Celsius, with larger forests providing even greater cooling. This temperature reduction decreases energy use for air conditioning, improves air quality by reducing ozone formation, and protects human health during heat waves. Cities surrounded by forests benefit from cool airflows, moving from forest to city during hot days. Strategic placement of urban forests and green corridors can direct cooling breezes toward neighborhoods most in need. As climate change increases, heatwave frequency and intensity, urban forests become critical infrastructure for adaptation and resilience. They provide cooling services worth millions of dollars annually in reduced energy costs and improved health outcomes. Planting and protecting forests in and around cities is therefore not just an aesthetic choice, but a practical climate adaptation strategy that saves money, energy, and lives while improving quality of life for urban residents. Some forest trees produce allelopathic chemicals that persist in soil for years. The chemical warfare some trees wage against competitors can have long-lasting effects. Black, walnut, eucalyptus, and some pine species produce chemicals that remain active in the soil for months or years after leaves fall and decompose. These allelochemicals inhibit seed germination and growth of competing plants, effectively controlling what can grow beneath and near the producing tree. Even after a tree is cut down, the chemicals may persist, preventing other species from establishing until the compounds finally break down. This chemical legacy shapes forest composition across generations, creating patches dominated by species that can tolerate the allelopathic effects while excluding others. The strategy is both clever and risky. It reduces competition, but also limits diversity, potentially making the area more vulnerable to pests or disease that specifically target the dominant species. In introduced ranges, trees like eucalyptus can dominate so thoroughly through allelopathy that they create near monocultures, transforming ecosystems. The soil becomes a chemical archive of past plant conflicts, containing molecular evidence of battles long concluded, invisible compounds that continue shaping the community composition long after the combatants have fallen. Forests modulate stream temperatures, keeping water cool for sensitive fish species. Forested watersheds provide critical temperature regulation for streams and rivers. Canopy cover shades the water, preventing direct solar heating. Groundwater flowing from forest soils is cooler than surface runoff, and forests promote groundwater infiltration. This temperature control is vital for cold water fish like trout and salmon, which require temperatures below 18 to 20 degrees Celsius to survive and reproduce. When forests along streams are removed, water temperatures can spike by 5 to 10 degrees during summer, exceeding thermal tolerance limits and killing fish or making rivers unsuitable for spawning. The riparian forest, trees immediately adjacent to water, is especially important. Even narrow buffers of streamside trees provide substantial cooling. Forest management practices increasingly protect these riparian zones, recognizing their disproportionate importance for water quality and aquatic ecosystems. The connection between forests and fish might seem indirect, but it's powerful and immediate. Trees that never touch the water nonetheless determine whether that water can support life. The forest's cooling shadow extends from hillside to stream, from leaf to fin, linking terrestrial and aquatic ecosystems in a partnership that benefits both. The diversity of forest floor leaves affects decomposition rates and nutrient cycling. Not all leaves decompose at the same rate. Oak leaves are tough and high in tannins, breaking down slowly over years. Maple and ash leaves are softer and nutrient-rich, decomposing in months. This variation affects nutrient availability and forest productivity. In mixed forests with diverse leaf litter, decomposition proceeds at varied rates, creating a constantly renewing supply of nutrients rather than boom and bust cycles. Fast decomposing leaves provide quick nutrient pulses, while slow leaves create long-term carbon storage. The mixture supports diverse decomposer communities. Different fungi and bacteria specialize in different leaf types, and this microbial diversity enhances overall decomposition efficiency. Forests with more diverse leaf litter often have more fertile soils and higher productivity. The fallen leaves are not waste, but investment, returning nutrients to soil in patterns that match the forest's needs. Each species contributes differently to this nutrient economy, and the mixing of contributions creates stability and resilience. The autumn carpet of fallen leaves is therefore not uniform, but a complex mosaic of chemistry and decay rates, an invisible landscape of decomposition that feeds the forest's future growth. Forests can grow on solid rock with barely any soil through specialized processes. In places where glaciers scraped away all soil, leaving bare bedrock, forests nonetheless establish and thrive. Pioneer, lichens and mosses colonize the rock first, their acids slowly dissolving minerals and creating tiny pockets of organic matter. Seeds lodge in cracks where a teaspoon of soil accumulates. Roots follow fractures in the rock, expanding crevices and accessing water and minerals. As these first plants die, their remains add organic matter. Over decades, enough soil accumulates for shrubs to establish. Eventually, trees gain a foothold, their roots penetrating deep into rock fissures, while also spreading across the rock surface in a shallow mat of soil built from their own fallen leaves. Watching a forest grow on bare granite, you witness primary succession, the slow, patient process by which life creates the conditions for more life. These rock forests demonstrate that soil isn't a prerequisite for forest, but rather a product of it. Trees don't just require soil, they create it, weathering rock, accumulating organic matter, and building the very foundation that will support future generations. The forest makes itself possible through its own slow work of transformation. Trees can adjust their growth rings based on climate conditions in ways that create historical records. Each tree ring is a time capsule, preserving information about the year it formed. Wide rings record favorable years with ample water and moderate temperatures. Narrow rings mark droughts, cold snaps, or other stress. But the information encoded goes deeper. The density of wood within a ring indicates seasonal conditions. The chemical composition reveals atmospheric conditions, including carbon dioxide levels and pollution. Isotope ratios in the wood reflect water sources and temperatures. By analyzing these features, scientists extract climate data from trees, reconstructing temperature, precipitation, and atmospheric composition, extending back thousands of years. Cross-matching patterns between many trees eliminates individual variation and reveals regional climate signals. The oldest tree ring records extend over 10,000 years, providing climate data from long before human weather records began. This information is invaluable for understanding natural climate variability, validating climate models, and providing context for current warming. Each tree becomes an instrument, a biological sensor recording environmental conditions throughout its life. The forests archive climate history in their bodies, writing stories that we're learning to read. Some forests exist in areas with less than 10 inches of annual rainfall. Forests need water, but the minimum is surprisingly low. In parts of Wyoming, Utah, and Mongolia, forests of juniper and pinyon pine survive on less than 10 inches of rain per year, amounts typical of deserts. These trees succeed through extreme water conservation. They have small, waxy leaves or needles that minimize water loss. Deep roots access moisture that penetrated during winter, snowmelt, and remains in deep soil layers. Shallow roots spread wide to capture brief summer rains. Growth is extremely slow. A tree might add only an inch of diameter in a decade. The forests are sparse, with wide spacing between individuals reducing competition for scarce water. These trees wait patiently through long droughts, sometimes not producing leaves or cones for years, then responding quickly when moisture arrives. Their wood is dense and resinous, resistant to decay and fire. These drought-adapted forests show that trees can survive in conditions we'd consider impossible, occupying the dry edge of where forests can exist. Beyond these sparse woodlands lie true deserts, where even the toughest trees cannot persist. These marginal forests mark the boundary between wood and sand, between green and brown, where life clings to existence on a thread of moisture. Forests release aerosols that can affect weather patterns hundreds of miles away. When trees release volatile organic compounds, these molecules don't simply dissipate. They react with sunlight and oxygen to form aerosols, tiny particles suspended in the atmosphere. These aerosols serve as cloud condensation nuclei and affect cloud properties, making clouds brighter and longer lasting. The aerosols can travel hundreds of miles downwind, influencing weather far from their forest source. Studies show that aerosols from Amazon forests affect cloud formation over the Atlantic Ocean and rainfall in West Africa. Boreal forests release aerosols that influence Arctic cloud cover and potentially affect ice melt rates. The chemical complexity of forest aerosols is astonishing, containing thousands of different compounds in combinations that vary by species, season, and stress conditions. Atmospheric scientists are still working to understand how these biological aerosols interact with human pollution, clouds, and climate. The forest's influence extends far beyond its physical boundaries, carried on the wind as invisible particles that seed clouds and shape weather across continents and oceans. Trees speak to the sky in a language of chemistry, and the sky responds with rain, clouds, and patterns of light that ripple across the planet. Trees can clone themselves, creating genetically identical groves that share resources. Some tree species reproduce not just through seeds, but through root suckering, sending up new stems from their spreading root systems. Aspen are famous for this, creating groves of hundreds or thousands of genetically identical stems, all connected underground. These clonal colonies share resources through their connected roots, supporting weaker members and coordinating responses to threats. Because they're genetically identical, they can't recognize each other as competitors, allowing more complete cooperation than between unrelated individuals. Some clonal tree colonies are ancient beyond measure. Pando, the aspen grove in Utah, may be 80,000 years old, making it one of the oldest organisms on Earth. Individual stems live only 100 to 150 years, but the root system persists, continuously sending up new shoots. This effective immortality comes through vegetative reproduction, avoiding the genetic recombination and novelty of sexual reproduction, but gaining continuity and persistence. The clone remembers, each new shoot carrying the same genetic information as stems that lived thousands of years ago. In clonal forests, the individual tree becomes less meaningful than the collective entity, the vast underground organism that expresses itself in a multiplicity of trunks and crowns. Forests can influence rainfall patterns through their effect on air pressure and wind. Large forested regions create their own weather dynamics through effects on air pressure and circulation patterns. During the day, forests heat more slowly than cleared land due to transpirational cooling and canopy shade. This creates temperature differences that drive local wind patterns, with air flowing from cooler forest to warmer, cleared areas. At night, the pattern reverses. At larger scales, vast forests like the Amazon create low-pressure systems that draw in moist air from the ocean, effectively pulling rain inland. When forests are cleared, these circulation patterns weaken or disappear. Computer models show that complete deforestation of the Amazon would reduce rainfall across the region by 20% to 30%, transforming rainforest climate to something more seasonal and potentially triggering a feedback loop towards savanna. The forest doesn't just receive climate, it creates climate through its collective effects on temperature, pressure, and moisture. Protecting large, intact forest blocks preserves not just trees, but the atmospheric dynamics they generate, the invisible architecture of air circulation that determines where rain falls and where droughts persist. The forest is a green engine, driving weather across continental scales. Some forests serve as carbon sinks, while others are carbon sources, depending on their stage. Not all forests remove carbon from the atmosphere. Young, rapidly growing forests are strong carbon sinks, absorbing more CO2 through photosynthesis than they release through respiration and decomposition. Middle-aged forests absorb and release roughly equal amounts, approaching carbon neutrality. Old growth forests were once thought to be carbon neutral, but research shows they often continue as moderate carbon sinks, slowly accumulating carbon in long-lived trees and stable soil organic matter. Disturbed or degraded forests can become carbon sources, releasing more carbon than they absorb, especially after logging, fire, or insect outbreaks that kill trees and speed decomposition. Tropical peatland forests drain and begin, releasing carbon from their deep organic soils. The carbon balance of forests shifts across time and with changing conditions, meaning that forest carbon accounting is complex and dynamic. Protecting old growth preserves massive existing carbon stores. Restoring degraded forests creates new carbon sinks. Managing forests for sustained yield can maintain long-term carbon storage if done carefully. The forest's role in the carbon cycle is not fixed but fluid, depending on age, health, and human management choices. Forests can persist on mountains above the elevational limit for soil formation. High on mountains, above the point where soil can form due to extreme cold and erosion, forests nonetheless persist. Trees grow on bare rock, in talus slopes, and on minimal soil pockets, their roots extending into cracks and weathered zones. These timberline forests are stunted and gnarled, sculpted by wind, ice, and snow. Trees might be centuries old, yet only a few feet tall, growing in twisted, prostrate forms called krummholz. They survive on minimal resources, eking growth from brief summer warmth and sparse nutrients liberated from rock. These edge-of-existence forests demonstrate the absolute limit of where trees can survive, marking the boundary between forest and alpine tundra. That boundary shifts with climate, moving upslope during warm periods and retreating during cold times. Currently, many timberline forests are advancing upward as climate warms, colonizing areas that were previously too cold. These high forests are sentinel ecosystems, among the first to show climate change effects. They also demonstrate that trees reach toward their limit, probing the very edge of possibility, finding purchase in places that seem impossible, growing when nothing should grow. Testimony to the stubborn persistence of life. As our journey through the forest comes to a gentle close, let the green quietness settle around you like falling leaves. These woodlands, ancient and patient, continue their slow breath beneath stars and sun, growing, connecting, and remembering. May the wisdom of the trees, their cooperation and resilience, their slow strength and patient endurance, stay with you as you drift into sleep. Thank you for joining me on this peaceful walk through the forest's wonders. If you enjoyed this exploration, please consider liking and subscribing to the Cozy Curiosity channel, where curiosity meets calm every night. Sleep well, stay curious, and until next time, may the forest's gentle whisper carry you softly through the night.